Hello, we are the Model United Nations Working Group in Ukraine, and today we are going to be demonstrating the flow of debate and Model United Nations procedures for a Model UN committee. Today we are using the United Nations Security Council as an example, but this can be used for any committee. We have a chair and 4 delegates.
I am a delegate. I am representing People's Republic of China.
I am the chair. I moderate debate and tell delegates when they may speak so that not everyone talks at the same time. I sometimes also have a secretary. They keep track of time for speaking and caucuses, keep track of the speakers list, and other tasks the chair needs help with. They sometimes are called a co-chair. Additionally, at an event, there can also be a secretary general. They are in charge of all committees at a conference, camp, or other event. In real life, they are the head of the United Nations. In MUN, they don't really do much directly in committee unless there are problems between delegates and chairs.
To open the committee session, the chair calls the session to order.
Attention delegates, please take your seats. I hereby call this United Nations Security Council session to order. Is there a motion to open debate? Yes, Ukraine.
Motion to open debate.
Is there a second? Thank you, Canada. All those in favor? All those opposed? This motion passes. Debate is now open.
At the beginning of each committee session, the chair will take attendance in alphabetical order. When your country is called, you may answer present or present in voting. Present means you can vote yay, nay, or abstain. Present in voting means you can only vote yay or nay, but may not abstain.
Delegates, we will now enter roll call. Please state your voting preference between present or present and voting. Brazil.
Brazil is present.
Canada.
Canada is present and voting.
If this is the first session of the committee, to start things off, you can use a speakers list. A speakers list is a way for each country to present their position on the committee and topics. You start by formally opening the speakers list, setting a speaking time, and then asking to be added to the speakers list. You can close the speakers list at any time. A speakers list can be used to debate agenda order or any other subject of debate. It is simply a more formal form of debate where the speaking order is set.
Are there any points or motions on the floor? Yes, Brazil.
Motion to open the speakers list with a speaking time of 2 minutes per delegate.
Is there a second? Thank you, Canada. All those in favor of opening the speakers list with a speaking time of 2 minutes? All those opposed? This motion passes. Please raise your placard if you would like to be added to the speakers list. Canada? Okay. Brazil, since you proposed the motion, you may go first.
The delegation of Brazil would like to propose that the order of discussion for this session be environmental sustainability, followed by space exploration. The nation of Brazil has a rich and diverse biodiversity that is in danger of being wiped off the earth if nothing is done. Space exploration, while important to scientific discovery, does not have the same immediate effect on the world that environmental sustainability does. Thank you. Brazil would like to yield the rest of its time to the chair.
Thank you, delegates.
Motion to be added to the speakers list.
Noted. Are there any other points or motions on the floor? Seeing none, we will continue with the speakers list. Canada, you have the floor.
The delegation from Canada believes that the environmental sustainability issue we see in our world should be debated first, then followed by space exploration. Canada believes that the exploration of space is by far a less pressing issue than the impending disasters and exponentially irreversible issues we see in environmental sustainability. Thank you for listening, and Canada now yields its time to the delegate of China.
That is in order. China, you have Canada's remaining time of 1 minute.
Yes, thank you, Chair. The delegate of China agrees with the delegation of Canada that environmental sustainability is far more pressing as an issue than space exploration. The issue requires immediate actions and collaboration among all the states. Thank you, Chair. I yield the time to the Chair.
Thank you. Delegate from Ukraine.
Thank you, Chair. The delegation of Ukraine also agrees that space exploration is not a pressing issue, and that the cover topic should simply be environmental protection and sustainability. I yield the rest of my time to any questions.
Any questions? Yes, Canada.
The Canada delegate would like to ask if you are opposed to eventually debating space exploration, or do you think we should not cover it at all?
I believe we could benefit from using the extra time and devoting it to simply environmental sustainability.
Okay, thank you. Are there any points or motions on the floor? Yes, Brazil.
Motion to close the speakers list.
Is there a second? Thank you, Canada. All those in favor? All those opposed? This motion passes. The speakers list is now closed. Are there any points or motions on the floor?
If you notice, when you are finished speaking, if you have extra time, you must yield it or give it away. You can yield your time to the chair, who just continues with committee, to another delegate, maybe an ally of yours, or to questions. This happens not just with the speakers list, but in any formal debate where you have speaking time. In MUN, you can't just start talking about anything. You need an agenda. Setting an agenda can happen immediately after calling roll or after a speakers list debate.
Brazil.
Motion to set the agenda to environmental sustainability, followed by space exploration.
All those in favor? All those opposed? This motion is in order and passes. We will start debate on the topic of environmental sustainability.
When you want to move on to the next agenda topic, you motion end debate on this agenda topic and proceed to the next one. More on ending debate later. Now that you have an agenda topic, you may begin debate on that topic. If you want, you can motion for another speakers list, this time specifically on the topic, or you can motion for another type of debate. The first one we will show is a moderated caucus. Delegates will raise their placards to be called on to speak, and the chair will call on speakers one by one until the moderated caucus has expired. Moderated caucuses must have a specified subtopic, a speaking time for each speech, and full length for the caucus time. The delegate who motioned for the caucus may go first, or they may yield their time to the chair if they don't want to speak.
Now that the agenda is set, are there any points or motions on the floor? Yes, Canada.
Canada moves for a moderated caucus of 10 minutes with a 1-minute speaking time on the topic of changing sea levels.
Thank you, Canada. Are there any other points or motions on the floor at this time? Yes, Ukraine.
Motion for a 10-minute moderated caucus with a 45-second speaking time to discuss the rapid rise of global temperature.
Unfortunately, that motion is not in order. The speaking time does not divide into the overall time for the moderated caucus. Would you like to amend your motion?
During a moderated caucus, it is important that the length of the individual speeches divides into the overall time proposed for the whole moderated caucus.
Yes, I will amend to a 10-minute moderated caucus with a 1-minute speaking time on the same topic.
That motion is in order. Are there any other points or motions on the floor? Yes, Brazil.
Motion for a 9-minute moderated caucus with 45-second speaking time to discuss the Paris Climate Accords.
That motion is in order. We will now vote on the motions in order from most disruptive to least disruptive.
Motions must be voted on in order of most disruptive to the committee to least disruptive. You can find the full order in the resources that accompany this video, but when voting between moderated caucuses, the moderated caucus with most speakers should be voted on first.
First is Brazil's motion for a 9-minute moderated caucus with 45-second speaking time to discuss the Paris Climate Accords. All those in favor, please raise your placards now. All those opposed? As we have 4 delegates and this is a procedural vote, we need 3 votes to pass the motion, which is 50% plus 1. This motion does not pass. Next is Canada's motion for a moderated caucus for 10 minutes with a 1-minute speaking time on the topic of changing sea levels. All those in favor? All those opposed? This motion also doesn't pass. Finally, we will vote on Ukraine's motion for a 10-minute moderated caucus with a 1-minute speaking time to discuss the rapid rise of global temperature. All those in favor, please raise your placards now. All those opposed? This motion clearly passes. Delegates, we are now in a 10-minute moderated caucus with a speaking time of 1 minute. I will tap the gavel quietly when you have 10 seconds left. Ukraine, you now have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. The rapid rise in global temperature we have seen over the past few years is an issue that we cannot ignore anymore. This is something that we must prepare for our future generations. We must protect the world. Over the past few years, we have seen changes in the nature.
Delegate, I'm sorry, your time has expired. All those wishing to speak in this moderated caucus, we still have time for 4 more speakers. Yes, China.
Thank you, Chair. The delegation from China wants to say that our country has been greatly impacted by the rapid rise of global temperature. The average of this issue, and I yield my time to the chair.
Thank you, Delegate. The time for this moderated caucus has elapsed. Are there any points or motions on the floor?
In contrast, an unmoderated caucus is where there's no formal speaking order. Delegates may speak freely, move about, and speak with other delegates privately, go to the restroom if needed, write draft resolutions, and so on. An unmoderated caucus is more disruptive to debate than a moderated caucus, so it should be voted on before moderated caucuses, regardless of when the speaker proposed the motion.
Yes, Brazil.
The delegate from Brazil moves for a 15-minute unmoderated caucus to discuss draft 1.0.
That motion is in order. Is there a second? Thank you, Canada. All those in favor, please raise your placards now. That motion clearly passes. Delegates, we are now in a 15-minute unmoderated caucus. You are now free to get up and discuss the draft with other delegates.
I was wondering what you think about the draft.
Delegates, the time for this unmoderated caucus has elapsed. Please return to your seats. Are there any points or motions on the floor? Yes, Ukraine.
Motion to extend the unmoderated caucus by 5 more minutes for the purposes of finishing writing the draft resolution.
Is there a second? Thanks, Brazil. All those in favor? All those opposed? This motion passes. You have 5 more minutes.
Aside from motions, there are a few other things you can say in committee. They are called points because they aren't asking for anything to happen to the debate or flow of committee. This point of inquiry is used for when you have a question about something. It can be procedural or about the committee procedures or about the topic. You can raise your placard and say this at any time, but do not interrupt a speaker.
Excuse me, point of inquiry. How long is left remaining in this committee session?
We have 45 minutes left.
Thank you.
The point of personal privilege is for questions or permissions relating to your personal comfort, such as an excuse to go to the bathroom, open a window, or for the speaker to speak louder.
Yeah, China?
Point of personal privilege. Could I step out to use the bathroom?
Granted.
A point of information is for when you need something clarified.
Brazil?
Point of information, which draft resolution are we discussing?
We are discussing the draft resolution called disaster relief.
A point of order is used when the delegate believes there has been a mistake in committee procedure that needs to be corrected.
Point of order? As we voted for 2 speeches for and 2 against, before we vote on the resolution, we should have 1 more speaker speaking against the resolution.
Right. Thank you, Delegate. All those wishing to speak against this resolution.
A right of reply is the right to speak to another delegate directly talking about your country, usually when a delegate feels personally insulted by another delegate's speech. If another delegate directly calls out your country, you can use this to respond and defend your nation. It can be granted by the chair.
We need to set strict limits on carbon emissions and actually monitor those emissions and hold countries accountable via impartial international monitors. We cannot let countries such as China act underhandedly and use our own monitors to falsify information about emission levels and continue to...
Right of reply.
Granted.
We maintain our right as a sovereign nation to decide which international bodies have access to state information and which do not.
Canada, please continue.
Thank you, Chair.
Once you've debated and used time in unmoderated caucuses to write a draft resolution, have enough sponsors or authors, and some signatories or supporters to your draft resolution, you must formally introduce it to the committee. After it is read aloud, typically the chair allows time for questions about the resolution.
Are there any points or motions on the floor? Yes, Ukraine.
Motion to introduce draft resolution drug trafficking prevention and have 2 minutes for questions afterwards.
Is there a second? Thank you, Brazil. All those in favor? All those opposed? This motion passes. Ukraine, please let me read to make sure you have enough sponsors and signatories. And then please read your resolution aloud to the committee.
Thank you, Chair. So the sponsors of this resolution are the delegations of Ukraine and Canada, and the signatories are the delegations of Brazil and China on the topic of drug trafficking prevention. So recalling the United Nations Convention Against Illicit Traffic in Narcotic Drugs and Psychotropic Substances of 1988, in particular its Article 12, which lays down the principles in psychotropic substances.
Thank you, Ukraine. You now have 2 minutes for questions.
After it has been introduced, the committee can use moderated or unmoderated caucuses to discuss the resolution. Edits to a draft resolution are called amendments. You can motion to add an amendment after it has been introduced. If the authors agree with the amendment, it is called a friendly amendment and is automatically added to the draft resolution. If the authors do not agree, it is an unfriendly amendment and must be voted on by the committee.
Motion to add an amendment.
Delegate, please wait to be recognized by the chair. Yes, Brazil.
The delegation from Brazil would like to motion to add an amendment to the draft resolution saying that states wishing to exempt themselves from individual substances classifications may do so to align with their national legislation.
Ukraine, is this amendment friendly?
No, it's not.
Okay, we shall put it to a vote. All those in favor of adding this amendment to the draft resolution? All those opposed? This amendment still passes and is added to the draft resolution.
Now, if Ukraine doesn't want their draft resolution to pass with this new unfriendly amendment, they could withdraw the resolution via a motion, argue why this point is important in a moderated or unmoderated caucus, negotiate with other states over its non-inclusion, and reintroduce the new draft resolution. When the committee is ready to vote on a resolution, they first must vote to start voting by moving its voting procedure. Remember that there can be more than one resolution being discussed, so be sure to specify if voting procedures are starting for all resolutions, just one, or in a particular order. You can also add a 2-for, 2-against debate before the final vote if you need a chance to persuade other delegates the reasons to vote for or against it. A 2-for, 2-against can also be used when debating agenda order.
Are there any points or motions on the floor? Yes, China.
Motion to move into voting procedures on all introduced resolutions.
Is there a second? I'm sorry, without a second, this motion fails. Are there any points or motions on the floor? Yes, Canada.
Motion to move into voting procedures for the draft resolution rising sea levels with a 2-for, 2-against argument.
Is there a second? Thank you, China. All those in favor? All those opposed? This motion passes. Canada, would you like to speak in this argument?
Yes, I'll speak in favor.
Okay, noted. Please raise your placard if you would also like to speak in this debate. Ukraine, I saw your placard first. Now raise your placard if you'd like to speak against. Okay, China and Brazil. We shall alternate for and against speakers. Canada, you may go first. You have 2 minutes.
Thank you. Canada, as a large country with multiple oceans along its borders, has a huge issue in our country.
Okay, now that the 2-for, 2-against time has elapsed, we are now in voting procedures for the resolution Rising Sea Levels.
Finally, it's time to vote on the resolution. Typically, delegates vote in favor or against with their placard like for other motions, but if instead a delegate motions to enter into roll call voting procedures, then each country is called from the roll call list and they state their voting preference as yay, in favor, nay, against, or abstain. Remember that those that were present and voting during roll call at the beginning of the committee may not abstain from a substantive vote.
The motion for a roll call vote on draft resolution sanctions on Venezuela has passed. We are now in voting procedures. Please state your voting preference when I call your name. Brazil.
Yay.
China.
Nay.
Ukraine.
Yeah.
Remember that those that were present and voting during roll call at the beginning of committee may not abstain from a substantive vote.
Canada.
Abstaining.
You may not abstain as you are present and voting at the beginning of this committee.
Then nay.
Say it's time for lunch or a break. This is how you pause committee, knowing that you'll resume the same topic at the same conference soon.
Yes, China.
Motion to suspend debate until the next committee session.
Is there a second? All those in favor? All right, all those opposed? This motion passes.
Say you're done talking about this topic and want to move on to the next agenda topic. This is how you signify that debate is ending on the current topic.
Yes, Brazil?
Motion to table and end the debate on the topic of environmental sustainability and move on to the topic of space exploration.
Is there a second? Thank you, Ukraine. All those in favor? All those opposed? This motion passes. We are now debating the topic of space exploration. Are there any points or motions on the floor?
When the conference is over, you need to motion to adjourn the committee. Sometimes you can specify until when or leave it open if you don't know.
Are there any points or motions on the floor? Ukraine?
Motion to adjourn the committee until the next model UN.
Is there a second? Thank you, Canada. All those in favor? All those opposed? This motion passes. Yay.